The Choose Love movement offers no-cost solutions that keep our kids safe, providing them with the skills and tools they need to flourish. Join us in our mission to create the world we want to live in, one that's connected and compassionate. Check us out at chooselovemovement.org. Together, we can choose love.
Hey everyone, Choose Love fans. This is Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. And today we have an amazing guest. This is a real treat. Elisabeth Rohm is joining us today. Elisabeth truly has a heart for choosing love, which, if you're a fan, you already know. And if you're just meeting her today, you're certainly going to find out. Elisabeth is an actress appearing on Law and Order, Hawaii Five-0, Magnum PI, NCIS, CSI Miami, Heroes, Angel, Miss Congeniality 2, American Hustle, Joy, Once Upon a Time in Venice, Bombshell, and so many more. If I went through all of your movies, because you work so consistently, that would be the podcast, period. She worked with the likes of Jennifer Lawrence, Robert De Niro, Judd Nelson, Sam Waterston, Bradley Cooper, just to name a few, as well as with incredible producers. Elisabeth has also produced her own movies, so many, including Girl in Room 13 about human trafficking, Girl in the Basement, as well as The Runner about a mother-son relationship strained by drug abuse, and more. Elisabeth, you're also an entrepreneur, restaurateur with a heart for philanthropy. You founded Respect Talks, where you offer an open forum and invite thought leaders to spark poignant conversations addressing today's biggest issues. And you're an ambassador for Special Olympics, and most importantly, a mom. I know you're divorced, remarried, and all of this is public information, but suffice it to say, you've had a lot of life experiences, both good and bad, just like the rest of us. But welcome, Elisabeth.
Thank you. So good to see you, Scarlett, and hello, everybody.
Great to see you too. Thanks so much for being on with us. So we met when you became interested in creating a movie or being a part of a movie about my book, Nurturing Healing Love. And we've been working together now for a couple of years on this project. What attracted you to this project?
Well, it feels like the essential topic of the time, to not only show you in your journey as a hero for your family, but also for humanity. And sorry, but this is probably going to go on. So
I love it. I love it. So for those of you who are just listening, Elisabeth has a Doberman Pinscher. Is that what it is in the back?
Right.
He's playing, and it's so funny. I mean, I've been on so many Zooms with you. He opens the door, goes in and out behind you. It's adorable.
I know. It's real. Anyway, so moving on, it goes without saying that, massive shootings publicly, disseminating families and communities, and, is obviously an essential topic of our time. But, one of the many great things I learned from reading Nurturing Healing Love and from becoming friends with you and wanting to tell your story is how to not judge others, and how to find forgiveness, and how to dedicate ourselves to the mental health of our children. So although the bigger topic, is one that still permeates our lives all the time, unfortunately, and gun control is a very complex issue, your work with the Choose Love movement is really the guiding light of the movie. Your grief and your being a mother and your commitment to humanity and your overcoming the loss of Jesse by choosing to live a life of nurturing, healing, and love, and always coming back to that wisdom that is so beyond, this frail human body, into a much more expansive thought for how can we show love to one another? How can we heal the hurt and the pain inside of us and move through life as a conscious, caring human being that knows how to navigate the complexities of their human emotions? And your dedication to doing that with kids, not only, speaks to, what I want to put out there in the world as a creative, as a director and producer and actress, but also as a mom. I've seen my child suffer over the last couple of years a lot due to COVID, being an only child. it's something we all feel in our lives, being an outsider looking in, or suffering in silence, or just carrying our burdens, and how do we get help, and how do we reach out, and who's there to hold us? And that's a big part of why I created the Respect Project, is I wanted to create a community where we told the truth on behalf of each other. So I don't invite people into the conversations to self-promote anything. It's just an invitation to have an honest conversation on behalf of each other. So if I tell my truth, it helps you with your existence. You tell me your truth, it helps me with mine. So when we suffer, it is a gift to be able to take that suffering out into the world and share that story, as painful as it is, on behalf of other people, but also our joys and our successes and how we find strength, and really inspiring each other, but knowing that we come from different perspectives in our lives, and that we're not all alike. So we have to really listen and show up for each other. And that's the Respect Project.
Yeah, for the past 10 years, I have been focused. 24/7, all I ever think of, all I ever research, all I'm ever trying to do is keep our kids safe and facilitate their emotional well-being. And I keep going back to Jesse's message and our Choose Love formula, the message that Jesse wrote on our kitchen chalkboard: nurturing, healing, love. And then the formula derived from that: courage plus gratitude plus forgiveness plus compassion and action. In everything that I've read, everything that I've researched, and I literally will read an author book and call them, and then have them on a podcast, or at least have a conversation with them and get their thoughts. And it all always points back to this really simple formula as being the basis for health and healing. Even just the compassion and action, having the courage to step outside of everything that we have going on. You have a lot going on as a human being, so do I, but stepping outside and stepping outside of our own pain and doing for others, that helps and heals ourselves. And I guess that's probably why, despite the fact that you're such a busy person with acting and producing and everything else that you have going on in your life, you make time for service and philanthropy, because that's what really probably fills your heart.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was driving home to have this conversation with you, and I was listening to a beautiful song that Tina Turner was singing, and it was all about returning back to love and sort of not identifying with our pain. She was a very spiritual person on, her own deep creative quest, of wisdom. And, human suffering is real. We do suffer, and different people suffer differently, whether they have a chemical imbalance or they have a leaning towards, some other sort of mental health obstacles they have to overcome. And so it's real. It's not to deny it. That's something that we fail at, sort of helping our kids navigate is, we want it to just all go away. We want to fix it. And we're the parents, and we think this is the loving mother energy, but it is real. And we want to acknowledge, their pain is a real thing. But how do you process that as a human being? And how do you take your own personal experiences and give them away, give them to others? And that's something I really learned from my mom. My mom was a total hippie chick. She believed that we were here to do divine work and to look out for one another and to commit to helping one another, so I wasn't raised by a woman who believed that you just move through life and only look out for number one. So I'm lucky I had a parent like that. And because of that, I hope that my child also becomes somebody who has a philanthropic heart. A philanthropist, I guess, is somebody who has so much money that they can just make things happen. But also every single human being out there can have a philanthropic heart. And that's thinking of others, and valuing yourself enough to know that you have something to offer somebody else. And it may just be your time. You may have just to give your time to just listen to somebody, to just communicate with somebody, to just have them feel heard, because we're all going through our own particular type of suffering. And so we just sometimes need to, sort of be understood from our own unique perspective. But it's hard to be able to help one another because we barely can help ourselves. And so, doing the self-work, I think that the Choose Love movement is offering in schools. And whether or not your parents have this ability to help you deal with your emotions and the world and how you move through it, you have other people you can reach out to, other communities. And like, Choose Love movement, there are places to go to receive the support you need to deal with your mental health issues just as a human being navigating this life. And, sometimes I feel like as a parent, I think I'm a pretty wise person, but I fail to be able to translate, my wisdom to my child all the time because they're different from me, and life can be very complex. And, I think especially for teenagers, a time of, a lot of confusion and despair and all of that. So I commend you on the work that you're doing. And I think that it's so important because we as parents can't do it alone. We need other gatekeepers like you out there trying to help our kids be healthy mentally, spiritually, and emotionally.
Yeah, I think that together we're stronger, and fear divides us, love unites us. And I think that you go back to raising kids in a tribe, really. I mean, we're all responsible for everyone else and the health and well-being of everyone else, because I believe that everything that we do every day impacts other people. And I think that, as I feel the same way as you do. As a parent, I really couldn't give my kids what I didn't have. And I say that I didn't know a lot of the essential life skills that Choose Love teaches, like how to have a healthy relationship. I mean, I didn't see it with my parents. So how do you learn that? You learn it from your parents. I wasn't taught how to do it in school. I didn't see it at work. So I became this person that didn't know how. I didn't know how to manage my emotions. I mean, I'll admit that. So, when I was searching for a solution at 44 years old, by the way, I came across all of this teaching and I thought, this is incredible. This would have saved my son's life. This would have saved Adam Lanza's life, who is the Sandy Hook school shooter, and it can reduce and prevent so much suffering. I loved my kids. It's not about love. It's about teaching them, as you said. How do you translate that wisdom to them? And I think that another thing that gets in the way of that is our not wanting our kids to be in pain. My gosh, any parent knows you
Right.
want to bubble wrap your kids. You do not want them to be in pain. And sometimes we want to, we avoid difficult conversations because we think it might trigger them. And we think that, when they're in their room and they're quiet, that means that it's all good. And that's not necessarily the thing. Choosing love, as we say it, is really having the courage to have those difficult conversations and to address the pain, the tremendous pain, actually, that our kids are in. If you look at the statistics on suicide and diseases of despair, and even, escalating that to school shootings, as it has become just a regular occurrence in our country, which is mind-boggling. I get so many questions. Why does that happen? Well, it happens because our kids are angry. Well, why are they so angry? Because they're in pain. And I think what we miss is
there's a lack of accountability by the adults,
yeah,
to
that
interrupt,
too.
but it's also, first of all, if you don't have the money to send your child to, a therapist or, a thought forum or a summer camp that's, really spiritual and creative and an outlet, if you don't have the funds to create all of these incredible, like, sort of sources and sort of outlets for their rage or fear or insecurity or whatever it may be, confusion just about being a teenager, their place in the world, maybe their sexuality or their gender or whatever it may be, whatever they're struggling with, where are you to turn? So you're then the provider of the wisdom. So, if you're a flawed human being, then where do you turn? And then, maybe it's a public school system. Well, they don't have a lot of time for that either.
Mhm.
And I have a child in the public school system, so I know that there's not enough accountability. They can't handle the load that they have,
Mhm.
and that's one major issue that needs to change. I mean, education is still a failing system in so many ways. And then the guidance counselors there and this sort of emotional community, they're struggling to meet the needs of these kids. And I understand that. I have compassion for them. But there's been bullying and targeting I've been seeing at this school.
Mhm.
And, they're doing the best that they can. But unfortunately, I think that, the kids are being failed. So a system like yours that is philanthropic, does go into the school system, does go into the prison system, addresses pain where pain lives, and
Mhm.
tries to give guiding sort of principles and support and community and a reminder to go back to love, which is the hardest thing to do when you're running scared.
Mhm. That's right.
And everybody, and even maybe your parents are telling you an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, they're mean to you, fuck them, they're a bitch, this, that, I mean, it's like, it's like road rage. It's like this kind of thinking, you know what I mean? And if that's also the kind of corrective, loving, supportive parenting you're getting, I mean, on one hand, you have compassion for that parent. Their child is hurting. Somebody hurt their child and they say, well, that guy's what? So that on one hand is understandable. On the other hand, you're driving your child towards, more feelings of isolation, rage,
It's the
and
same issue that they're being faced with in school, right? The same thing. It's just escalation of the issue. It's not de-escalation. And we
right.
think that, having boundaries on one side is really good, but, punching the guy in the face that said something to you is not ever the best thing to do. The best thing to do, and we say, is choosing love, because that person that is being unkind is doing it because they are in pain. Period. I mean, I've talked to so many people and so many prison systems and at-risk youth. I know nobody that I have ever met has ever hurt another human being intentionally, physically, mentally, or emotionally, by the way, who has not been in pain. And so you just have to address that pain. So what would you say if you know that person being unkind is in pain? The strongest response would be, what happened? How can I help you? And really, that de-escalates the situation, and you take your power back. You are the strongest person. And I look at anti-bullying programs, and I think the latest one that I saw, the logo has a fist with the red circle and a line through it. But anyway, it's the same as anti-bullying. It's like two double negatives that don't make a positive. It's like the war on drugs. It's also like, I don't know, but even anti-gun, what is it? It's like an advertisement for gun ownership. I think we need to start rethinking how we're approaching these societal issues. And instead of focusing on the problem, we need to focus on the root cause of the suffering that leads to those issues.
Right. And even just, in regards to bullying and targeting, I mean, from sort of outing people to, anti-Semitism, what have you, you're just seeing learned behavior sort of running rampant on campuses and so forth. And the school isn't taking the corrective measures to teach children how to not be hateful. I think there's such a fear of actual sort of guiding and parenting or sort of mothering or nurturing, healing and loving these kids and giving them what they need and deserve, which is a different way of seeing and reacting to things, to life, to pain, that they, whether it's parents at home or professionals in schools or, and of course, this is not, a blanket statement. I've, seen a lot of great teachers in my time.
As have I. Oh my gosh.
A lot of great, counselors and therapists and psychiatrists, all the things, that, we have had accessible to us. I'm grateful for. And I think my kid is thriving because he has had the support that he needed. But I would also say that, there's a huge gaping need for our children. And I think that the Choose Love movement is really speaking to that need. And we are also, as adults and parents, benefiting from the wisdom our children are learning through the Choose Love movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I call educators our modern day superheroes because they're really on the front lines of all of this pain that our kids are in, and they're doing their best. I mean, it's hard enough if you think about it as a parent with one child or two children, but think about having a classroom of 25 or 30. I mean, that's really overwhelming. And even the school counselors, they have sometimes a workload of 600 kids. And so there's no way that you can do anything but put out the fires that are there. And so a program like the Choose Love movement comes in, and they teach essential life skills that help kids manage their emotions, help them have healthy relationships. We know connection and belonging is so key for emotional well-being. But also, I think even more importantly, they give a different perspective on pain. We teach post-traumatic growth, and that pain is there. It has a purpose. It's in your life to help you grow. We're designed as human beings to actually grow through pain. We only grow when we're outside of our comfort zone. And that's when there's pain. And if you look back in your life, you can see how painful events really kind of catapulted you towards change that you may not have made, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you and I have talked about this quite a lot. We've experienced, obviously, you specifically, a lot of grief and loss. And I think that, the cracks are where the light comes in. I mean, you would do anything to have Jesse back, but you also identify the things that, you gained, and the wisdom and the strength that you've gained through all of that pain and suffering and loss. And I feel very similarly. I think that, looking back on my whole life, there were some very difficult chapters. I felt very love starved as a child. And, I think even just in my young adult life, my mom died very young, that loss. Then 2 years later, my mom's sister died. And I know from my own experience, instead of getting angry and retaliating and bitter and broken, I grew stronger, through these experiences. And the most important thing, though, is to not just be strong, but to return back to a loving, soft heart. And that is really hard to do when you've been hurt, and you've been hurt again and again. And we all do get hurt. So how do we return back to a loving spirit when we haven't received a lot of it in our life? And, I just think the work that you're doing is really noble. I have learned so much from you as a friend and as a, colleague and mother in arms and all of these things, because it really does come back to the compassion and the loving and the nurturing that, we can do for one another. And it's actually the light that comes through our own pain and suffering that creates an opening for us to share our wisdom, our strength, and our love with others. We wouldn't have that sort of overwhelming love to give if we hadn't experienced the opposite of love, hurt, fear, pain, loss, and so forth. And I think that that's what I mean about the Respect Project. I want to create a space in which everyone respects one another, and everything that makes each of us different becomes a gift to the other person. If I've learned something through difficulty or pain and suffering in my life, I didn't do it for nothing. I want to give it away. I want to take what I've been through, and that's my offering, is to say, I've been through this. I don't want you to go through this. Here's how I think we can avoid it. Here's my offering to you, and the invitation of the Respect Project is all of us come in with our very different perspectives, our different life experiences. There's no way for me to compare the loss of my mother to the loss of your son, a little boy who should have lived a long, long, healthy, thriving life. But, that's my experience. That's what I can offer to the conversation. So we all come in with these different experiences, and we say, this is what I've learned. This is what I've got for you, and just, I guess I just say, like, tell the truth quickly, tell your truth. on behalf of other people, because people will benefit from you being vulnerable and exposed, you know, in a way that they can really learn from. You didn't go through your suffering in your life for no reason. You went through it in order to make the world a better place, to teach others and to help guide them through your strength and wisdom. I mean, that's what I've learned from suffering.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And that brings it all around to your role as an actress and a movie producer, is actually telling that hard truth through story, which is what, you know, we're planning on doing with Nurturing Healing Love. I think that story is the basis for learning. I know that when I tell my story, it opens hearts and it facilitates trust because I'm being vulnerable, and trust facilitates love. And then, you know, when I tell my story, people want to tell their story. And then that is true connection. And it happens to be through pain, which is pretty interesting, right? If we have the courage to share our pain, then that facilitates deep connection and healthy relationships, to be honest and open. And there's even this thing called vicarious post-traumatic growth, where if you do read somebody else's story or you share yours with somebody else, that person can benefit from having post-traumatic growth. They can actually grow through your story themselves. So that's pretty powerful too.
Yeah, I think that, you know, a Tennessee Williams line comes to mind where he says that writers are his best friends in a play that he wrote. And I think for all of us alone in our homes, you know, pandemic life or otherwise, television and movies become our intimate friends. Characters in shows and movies become a part of our story. Our narrative expands through us watching these narratives. And I want to tell true stories that make an impact and make the world a better place. So I can't think of anything more powerful than a mother's journey through the loss of her child and the beautiful work that came out of that loss in identifying, you know, your compassion for Adam Lanza and just children at large. And so, you know, that kind of a narrative can really change lives. And you know, I mean, I for one am a fan of movies and television because it reaches into your heart and it's cathartic and it's private. And I've been on many an airplane watching a movie, crying my eyes out, you know, feeling connected to others, feeling like my heart is lit and sort of opened, you know, wide because the storytelling and the performances, you know, have an impact and it matters. You know, and I think obviously great entertainment can be great entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I really enjoy telling stories that have a mission, a purpose behind it, along with great acting and directing. But I think what the world needs now is to have a more inclusive mindset and for us to really look out for one another. And I think that younger people have really gone through more than you and I can even fathom, because we had a very different childhood. We grew up really similarly. You're in Connecticut, I was in upstate New York, you know, sort of a freedom to our childhood that, you know, our children don't experience, especially because of a lot of these issues that we've talked about today. And I do think what the world needs now is to really look out for each other.
Yeah, I totally do. I think with all the separation and polarization that's going on, that I noticed really after Sandy Hook, and it was then anti-gun, pro-gun. And I realized, well, that is not going to solve the problem that we have in front of us. So, which is really why I created the Choose Love movement, to have a place where everyone could come together to be part of the solution. So basically to take responsibility for what's going on in our world and fix it, because no one else is going to do that for us. And we're all connected in the want and need to love and be loved. So, you know, that was the impetus for the Choose Love movement. And then realizing that, gosh, our kids are in school for the majority of the day, and they're not always learning this at home. They didn't with me. And even best case scenario, if they are, we know it has to be reinforced and practiced at school, because it is actually a practice that we do every single day, all day long. I don't know about you, but I wake up in the morning sometimes and I have just thoughts that are just, to-do lists and fears and anxiety for the day, what's on my plate. And I have to remind myself to switch those thoughts, to shift the focus of my lens with gratitude. And so just start to tick off gratitudes. In fact, I tick off gratitudes all day long. And forgiveness was a big part of the Nurturing Healing Love book. It had a theme of forgiveness, because that is such an important thing. That, I always say that life is this beautiful thing that gives us the opportunity to practice all of these skills and tools that Choose Love brings us. But, every day, I don't know about you, but there are opportunities for forgiveness, even if you're driving down the road, which is a little bit easier than maybe if it's a family member who has said or done something to hurt you. That's a little bit more difficult, but there's always an opportunity, even if it's something that you've already chosen to do, but now you're in the process and you may have some anger boiling up and you have to forgive again. It's just such an important thing to do. And it is the key to healthy relationships, and healthy relationships are the key to happiness, per Harvard University's 85-year longitudinal study, longest ever study on human life, 3 generations saying that healthy relationships, key to happiness. How do you do that? Forgiveness and gratitude helps strengthen you to get to that forgiveness. And then, the compassion piece. It's like after the tragedy of losing Jesse, I could not now live my life any other way but through service. And I didn't live my life that way. I say 10 years and a day ago, but I can't imagine living my life any other way now. And if I can lay my head down on the pillow at night and say, I've learned something and I have helped another human being, I am happy and fulfilled.
There's so many topics that have just arisen in just that one statement you made. First of all, I have so much compassion for single moms.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you have to put all the food on the table, the house, the roof over the head, take care of the animals because the kids, want pets and this, all the things, you want to give them good experiences. And it's just a huge sacrifice. And every day it takes so much effort. And at the end of the day, you're a human being and you're tired and you don't have a lot left to give and you need some time for yourself. Balancing the single parent life and really being able to be there for your children in the way that you want to be can feel so bleak at times, because you're just only one person trying to handle so many things on behalf of the kids that you love so much, and just trying to maintain a nurturing, healing, loving self for yourself is hard. And then what do you have left to give other than now you've made dinner, now you're telling them to do their homework, and then they're navigating life feeling not seen and not heard as well, because you're doing your very, very best to give them everything that they deserve, which is shelter, food, all the things. I have so much compassion for being a mom, as a mom on the run, is what I'd say, like a mom that's a little bit scared on how we're all going to survive and taking care of, your children.
That because you lived it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, it's very, very real, our need to provide and our fear that we won't be able to, or our desire to be loved, but there's no time for that either. And, trying to just navigate how to be there for these children we brought into the world, our responsibility to them. But where does that leave us? So we're running on empty a lot of the time too. So how can we really give them the wisdom and the strength that they need to not be reactive people, to return to love and compassion and healing and nurturing I think that's also a lot of life work that one needs to practice, to go into the practice of what you're saying, which is a daily practice. I start my day praying and meditating and quiet and sort of reserved and thoughtful and intentional. And like you said, always going back to gratitude, but also just allowing yourself to just feel pure joy and pure bliss and just sort of being alone. I think also for children navigating their aloneness, how disconnected we feel from one another, and how, how hard intimacy is and how important friendship and intimacy they really are for our existence. Like you said, healthy relationships, but they're not easy to accomplish, and children are so truthful and so pure that they can't lie to themselves about what's not happening for them in their relationships. And so, then they become reactive and hurt and rageful, maybe even, or even vindictive if they've been bullied or alienated or left alone, or the school's not meeting their needs, or their parents aren't meeting their needs. They're suffering. So you have to find that, like you said, daily practice where your lens gets clean and clear and pure, where you are enough and your nurturing and healing love of yourself is deliberate and thoughtful and kind and all the things. And hopefully you learn that from your parents, because you're seeing them being nurturing and healing and loving to themselves, so that they can then teach that to you. But, it's a slippery slope, because we're all just trying to survive and get by. So we learn bad habits from one another. We don't take the time to really have these deeper conversations, which is a big part of what you're doing by going into these schools. In a sense, is you're saying, I see you and I hear you, and I'm carving out the time to really make you feel that. And then hopefully you can take that out into the world and make others feel that way, and bring that spirit out there. But it's hard. And also if your spiritual life is sort of not clear for you, and the mystery of life feels very overwhelming, it's hard to feel safe. And I think that that's another reason why we really have to look out for each other and be transparent and real and tell our stories and give it all away, and if you can't figure out what to do next, just do one thing next, which is just do the next right thing. Do what makes you feel good, do what makes your cup runneth over, and just do that one next thing. And I like that. When I feel really overwhelmed and like just chaotic, I just try to do the next right thing, on behalf of myself or others, so that I move through the world not being reckless with my own heart or other people's hearts.
I love that. I love that. And you said something, connecting safety to, a sense of safety to a practice every day, coming to the present moment, because usually in the present moment, we're safe. But in our heads, we're either ahead of ourselves with anxiety, or we're thinking, dredging up things in the past. And I think we need to give our brains a break every day, and remind ourselves about that, and let our kids see that, and have the courage to have those hard conversations, so that the kids can feel seen. Because I will tell you that with all of my conversations in prison, and in school, and with at-risk youth, and even with former school shooters, the number one takeaway that I've had through all these conversations is that people really struggle with self-esteem and self-worth and self-love, and they don't feel worthy of being seen. So, but they're desperate. Of course, we all want to be acknowledged as human beings. Safe, seen, and celebrated is a saying that I love. And yet they don't feel seen, so they might act out or do things to try to get attention, and it's in a negative way. So then they're labeled, and then it goes downhill from there. And so, it's having the courage to be present with another human being, whether it's your child, whether it's your friend, whether it's someone else, whether it's a teacher with a student, having the courage to be present with someone in pain. You don't have to know the right things to say. A lot of times there are no words for what people are going through. You don't have to have special skills or expertise. You just have to have the courage to be present with one another, to show that you care. And caring goes beyond kindness. Caring is kindness plus action. It's actually doing something for one another. And the incredible thing is, when you have the courage to do that, you do that for yourself. And that's what I heard you say, which is, I mean, there's connection in its essence right there.
Yeah, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself, and I always say to my child, just don't focus on teaching everybody else a lesson for what they're not doing for you. Focus on yourself and your singular journey. I know you need love and intimacy and friendship. I know that you don't feel that you have the greatest friends in the world right now, or these connections don't feel satisfying to you. You're a deep, real, emotionally intelligent person. And it's really hard to have, those kinds of deep relationships. People feel, they feel so protective of their vulnerabilities and what they perceive to be their weaknesses. They bury them and keep them inside, and they don't tell what their real human experience is. They only bring out their legend. They introduce you to their legend. You're not authentically really meeting somebody. They've got their things they say, and that's what they bring out, and that's who you're getting to know. And that's why so many people can end up in adult relationships where they feel fooled or misled, because that person has got such, they're frail themselves, and they've introduced you to the version of themselves they think they should bring out into the public versus the person they actually are. And I think
I've done it.
I've done it too. That's another reason why I really wanted to create the Respect Project. I thought to have honest communication with diverse people from diverse backgrounds, come in and share, their point of view and what's different about them, and share us on, discuss essential topics of the time, and realize that we are all different and that we all have to respect one another, which in turn makes us respect ourselves more. I felt could be a contribution that I could make, because I think one of the things I hear you always doing, is you're creating hope for children. And you're creating hope for their parents, because you are trying to pierce this illusion that, life is easy, or that it should be easy, or that, we're not going to suffer. It's a matter of managing our human experience in a way that we should take ownership in, and if we can't get it from the people that are around us, that we have to find it and seek it for ourselves. That's part of our self-preservation, is learning how to manage our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think telling our stories, although they may seem painful, whether it's in a podcast or on a public stage or in a prison or a school or in a movie or television show, is actually giving people hope. So for anybody who's out there listening, who is introducing people to their legend and not just telling their truth on behalf of other people, I would say open your mouth and your heart. I like this thought: when your actions, your words, and your thoughts are the same, then you have true peace. And you're not leading with your pain and your suffering. You're leading with love, because you're not hiding in the shadows from any aspect of yourself. You've found unity inside yourself. And that's what I hope that we can do as storytellers with each other, is unite our thoughts, our hearts, and our minds into one cohesive thing, where we tell each other our story to try to help other people navigate their own. Because we're not doing anybody any favors by introducing our legends out there in the world.
Yeah, so beautiful. And each one of us is totally unique because of our experiences and even because of our pain. So we're viewing the world in a different way. We have stories, a version of a story that only we can tell, only we can offer. And so everybody that's listening, that's you, and that's your gift. I'm sure you have more gifts. That's one of them. And only you can tell that story. And people want to hear that. That is the connector right there. But having the courage to do that.
There have been so many times you've been on the Respect Project, And people feel so changed by having met you, Scarlett. I mean, just your brightness, your light. And that's the other thing I would also say is that, you know, when you've had tremendous loss, pain, suffering, maybe even abuse in childhood or what have you, just your story, your personal story, you know, trying to still find the things that you celebrate and that you delight in, and the simple things, you know, it will become like a living, breathing mantra. You know, you will find that what Scarlett said, you know, will become just more and more natural. You will start to exclaim the things you're grateful for just throughout the day. You don't have to just find that moment to think of your grateful thoughts. It becomes then, you know, your muscles get stronger. And these are all just learned behaviors. I think you can teach yourself ways in which to find joy, even in your darkest times. And of course, you know, you and I would never want to go through some of the things we've been through. But we also can see how, you know, that the sort of, you know, cracks are where the light came into our heart and when we became more expansive. So you have a choice when you suffer. You can either choose to become more closed and you know, and go into the darkness, or you can go into the light. And I think all of these, like you said, are a growing opportunity, an opportunity for our souls and our spirits to grow and to, you know, add to humanity. So let's not have arguments about, you know, gun control versus not gun control. Or I wish no one would have a gun. And so I'm probably pretty have a very strong opinion about that. But I think what you've done so beautifully is you don't polarize people, and you're not interested in having the gun control conversation. You're interested in cultivating more love and more healing, and creating world leaders, as opposed to, you know, hurt children who become hurt adults who hurt people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Stopping that generational cycle of dysfunction. And I love that. And that's a great way to wrap up too, with just the fact that it's a choice. We have, you know, this beautiful prefrontal cortex in our brain. It's where logic and reasoning reside. It helps put a brake on our emotions and actually gives us a choice moment to moment, every single day, in every single situation, of how we thoughtfully respond. And ultimately, we're responding out of love or fear. And the outcomes look so different. And this beautiful thing that you just mentioned, that we have a choice, is so liberating and so freeing, and just such an amazing thing about each one of us that we forget. And I will tell you something, I visit inmates a lot in prison, and they didn't know they had a choice. And when I tell them they did, they are shocked, for one, and overjoyed. They didn't realize that then, but they know that if they had known they had a choice, that they would have chosen love. Now we're giving the opportunity to kids who can do that from a young age. But that choice thing is really huge. And I'm so glad that you are, you know, have the courage, Elisabeth, to express your truth, your vulnerability through the stories that you have created and produced. And I look forward to ours coming to light as well. As a wrap-up question, you know, we have a formula for choosing love. So it's courage plus gratitude plus forgiveness plus compassion and action equals choosing love. I'm curious, Elisabeth Rohm, which character value really resonates with you at the moment? Do you think that you practice the most, and why? And how do you practice it?
Well, the two things that stand out to me the most that I return to all the time are forgiveness and courage.
Mm-hmm.
I have a no fear policy. If I'm afraid, I'm going to dive right in. If I don't know, I'm going to seek. If I'm going to, you know, if I'm overwhelmed and unclear, you know, I get quiet. You know, I want to face those fears. I want to dance with fear, and I celebrate the mystery of life and the questions. We're living and breathing a question. We don't know how it's all going to play out today, tomorrow, the future, the afterlife, what have you. All we have it's all a big, beautiful mystery. And I would just say being comfortable in the not knowing and not letting it ever become fear. And if it becomes fear, like penetrate it. That is really huge for me, I think. And then forgiveness, not leading with your legend, your legend, your story of yourself, the story you tell people, this happened to me, and then this happened to me, and then they did this to me, and they, try to move through that and forgive others. And by forgiving others, that does not mean that you are weak. That does not mean that you are naive or that you're even letting them back into your life. You may want nothing to do with them, but they're not your responsibility to retaliate against or teach them a lesson or, so forgiveness. I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to keep my side of the street clean. And I'm going to make sure that what I put into the world is good and kind and intentional. And I always have a thought, which is, is it necessary? Is it true? And is it good? From my perspective. So I try to ask myself, is it necessary? Is it true? Is it good? And if it's not, then I really shouldn't be messing around with it.
I love that. And the forgiveness enables you to be the true version of yourself. And that's someone who's learned from difficulty, whatever that means. You're not the victim. That is not who you are. You are taking that tough experience. You're learning from it, growing through it. You're strengthened by it. And then that is the true essence of yourself. That is love. And that's beautiful. I love that. Choosing love over fear. I think that's why we're all here on earth to do that every single day. And then also forgiving one another so that we can be the best version of ourselves and not be held hostage by a person or situation that hurt us. That's beautiful. That's the true essence of who you are. And thank you so much for sharing that with the Choose Love audience and your audience and everyone else who is learning and growing with us. I really appreciate you so much. Thank you for being with us.
I appreciate you too. I love you so much. And the one thing that I'm really walking away with from this conversation is don't give your pain too much power. Take your power back and identify it as just, something that you can pass through and move through. It's really just, it's a part of your superpower, all that you experience. And just don't give your pain so much power that it runs your life. It is an opportunity, like you said, Scarlett. So I applaud you. I love you. Thank you for having me.
I love you too. Thank you. And I will talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hey, hey, oh. It's all part of us. We can all choose love. It'll lift you up if you let it in. Let the